Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lorelei Shamayo, and this is MeWe Metaphysics and Wellness events for energizing body, mind, heart, and soul. We have events throughout the Northwest and online, and we interview our practitioners and vendors so you get a chance to know who we are before you meet people at an event. I'm here today interviewing Abbie Vasquez. Abbie, it's great to be with you.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit about what you offer.
I like to consider myself primarily a tarot reader, but I also have additional skill sets involving kind of like my clairsentience and clairaudience. And I use that with my tool of tarot to give kind of like all-encompassing style readings. I generally really like to stay really specific and focused, but sometimes it hops into we started one question, we ended up on another. That's more than fine because obviously we needed to know it in some way, shape, or form.
It's great. It's great. Do you have many decks, or do you have one particular deck you love, or what do you?
Yeah, so I also buy and sell tarot. So I have a lot of cards that I love to use for myself, but I tend to stick to a Rider-Waite-Smith style of deck to be like my client-facing deck, because it's the one that I read the fastest, and it's the one that I can kind of ride the wave of my intuition as it shows up for me. So the other decks that I have that are all over my home and my treehouse, those are kind of like for me or for certain situations, but I tend to stick with my Rider-Waite.
No, it's great. It's great. Could you just if any of them come to mind, can you give us any flavor of what are the different aspects of the decks that you love of the other ones, just so?
Oh my goodness. So right now, one deck in particular that I'm loving is called Shadowland Tarot. And one of the reasons that I'm in love with it right now is because of the watercolor and sketchy nature of the deck. And so it's just an interesting, quirky, kind of weird, a little macabre, a lot like myself. So I tend to gravitate towards decks that are kind of, instead of so white in color, either in cardstock, I tend to gravitate more towards decks that are black in color or darker in color. So I tend to lean that way. But I do have a few that are super colorful, like the Sacred Bee Tarot, which is all fuchsias and dark greens and purples, and so that has its place in my color love as well.
It's great to just get a little more of a flavor, right, of you and behind the scenes, and yeah, why. How'd you get started doing tarot?
My first set of cards came to me from my mother, actually, when I was 12 or 13 years old. She caught me in my bedroom. No, this is down South Arkansas, right? So I'm in my bedroom in some sort of little ritual, and I had all these candles lit in my bedroom on my floor by myself. My mom comes walking in. Of course, I scare her because she thinks I'm going to burn the house down. And so the next day, she comes with a deck of cards saying, "Here, use this. Don't burn the house down." That was her. That's all she wanted to know. She didn't want to know what I was doing or what I was thinking or what was happening for me. She's just "Here, use these cards. Don't burn the house down." And funny enough, it happens to be a deck that I still have and use all the time. Just standard yellow box, Rider-Waite-Smith as well. But it's the first deck that I ever had, and I use it currently with a lot of ancestral work and kind of talking to my ancestors, essentially. So kind of has that little connection for me. But yeah, that's how I started originally. And then I ended up shifting more professional, or to be a bit of a more refined professional over the last 3 or 4 years, as I was transitioning out of being a industrial designer, was what the life used to be, into something a bit more metaphysical and kind of falling into my natural inclinations instead of what I thought corporate America wanted me to be. So it happened to be that I had a second nature when it came to tarot cards still. So I just refined it. And so now it's the persistent love. There's never a day that I don't touch the cards in some way, shape, or form. So I love them. I love them.
It's a great story. I appreciate that your mom was supportive of you exploring. That's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate you reminding me about your drawings too, because I've seen some of your drawings and they're beautiful. I know, they're so beautiful. So I'm looking forward to the evolution, right, of all that you do. So it's great that you mentioned connecting with ancestors. Maybe what are the different types of questions that people come to? What is a working with someone often look like?
There's a mixed bag to it, because sometimes people want to connect with loved ones that have recently passed, like their grandmother or maybe a great aunt, a best friend that they used to know. And so my skill set does allow me to kind of pull in their loved one to kind of communicate and maybe pass along information, validation, knowledge, and that, this, that, and the other. And then sometimes it's more ancestral where we're looking for maybe some information on a grandmother's grandmother, like where did some ancestral trauma start from, or where does it trickle through the line, or what's its influence, and how did we become the way we are? Well, it started from who raised the people who raised the people who raised the people that raised us. So often I deal with clients who are trying to understand themselves better, and sometimes I'll get like a little nudge. It's like, oh, we need to go back. We need to go back in time and kind of pull down some great grandmother on the father's side has some knowledge to partake or share to us. And I try to pull in that information and then package it in a way that's useful and meaningful moving forward, so they have something to act on, something to work with, instead of just like, oh, she loves you, she thinks you're great, proud, yay. I like that, but I also want to give something that's also a little bit more practical too.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so just tell me a little about how people are drawn to you, because they can be drawn to you in so many different ways. What's your sense of?
Yeah, I find that people who often identify as other in some way, shape, or form are attracted to me, being kind of like a walking other. Although I'm brown, I have curly hair, I'm usually flamboyant and a little bit loud. So people tend to accidentally see me because I'm just making a bunch of ruckus in a corner somewhere. And then it's usually I try to maintain like an approachability and an openness and like, yeah, come hang out. You swear, I swear too. Come sit down. Let's hang and cuss each other out. It'll be fun, you know? And so it's like people have to have a sense of humor to work with me. And so people like to laugh, then they find me entertaining. If they want a little bit of tough love, they find me easy to work with. If you're super soft and sensitive, I may be off-putting, but I do try to have as much grace or as much kindness and compassion. But I always tell people I will hold their hands, love on them gently, and then call them on their mess. So it's just I'm calling them up in that moment. But those are some of the ways in which people usually either see me, spot my big old hair coming down wherever it's coming down from, or just hear me because of my voice also travels. So if I'm giggling, y'all will probably hear it.
It's great. It's great. You're I say, well, while you like lay it out for people, I totally have seen your sensitivity and your care at the same time. So I appreciate the way that you play with who you are.
Good. I want to make sure I don't come across as too much of an abrasive person, because I know I can be, but I also think like, we need a shovel, right? A shovel digs into the dirt. It has to have a sharp edge. It has to be a certain point. It has to be rigid to do the work. So I feel like I can be a bit like a shovel sometimes. I might make a great weapon too. Like if someone's coming into your house, I'm telling you, I'm really good for that.
That's great. If people want to connect with you, learn more about you online, where do they go?
My website is probably the easiest to access, and that's www.avtarotreadings with an S at the end.com. I can also be found on Facebook at AV Tarot, Instagram, same name. And generally, if you do any sort of internet search for AV Tarot or my name, I'm the only one, luckily. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Great. Well, I'm so excited to experience more of your work and have more people experience you and all that you do. Yeah. Oh, and for all of you listening and watching, you can find out more about all of our events at mewefairs.com. That's MEWEFAIRS.com. See you soon.